Every time you're closer to me.
Welcome to Unsigned Hype Episode 2. On this episode, I have the pleasure to talk to the incredible artist Babis, aka Sillyboy'S ghost relatives from Greece. Prior to our interview, I asked Babis which song he would play for someone that wasn't familiar with his music yet. He chose his song A Place to Pretend off his 2014 LP Stalker. If you're not familiar with Babis' music yet, here's a snippet of his song A Place to Pretend before we jump into the interview. Welcome to Unsigned Hype. This is A Place to Pretend by Sillyboy'S ghost relatives, and I have the absolute pleasure to have Babis, aka Sillyboy'S ghost relatives, on the show today. Babis, why is this the song you would play to someone that has never heard of your music before?
I really don't know, to be honest. It's just a pick that I had. I haven't listened to this track for a long time. It's a 2014 track from the record Stalker, from the LP Stalker. I guess I'm in a similar kind of mood this year, and as I told you, this song kind of represents some changes that I had at that period of time that I'm experiencing the same right now, in a way, sort of. And it's a simple song, a quiet one, so I guess, I don't know, I felt like that. I don't know if it's much of an introduction, because I'm not so consistent in the things that I do, so it's not an easy thing, to introduce myself. It's always the worst thing for me to do.
And when you say changes, I remember you mentioning to me transformative changes. And
Yeah.
I feel like that album was a different sound. You started, at least I remember some tracks from the LP, Cry Like a Girl, for example, that to me sounded like a little bit different than the things you did before. I'm wondering, can you elaborate a little bit on the mood changes? So what changed in your current mood right now? What sound do you want to bring back, basically?
You mean the things that I'm recording now, or the things that I was experiencing back then?
Well, both, because you said that you were in a similar kind of feel
Yes, I am.
today,
Yes, I am.
and I'm wondering where that comes from.
Working on that LP was like the first time I tried to collaborate with other people, because usually I was working alone and producing everything by myself and recording everything by myself. So I needed to get out of this state and be with people, and work with people. So it was the first time, it was the third record that I had, and it was the first time that I started introducing other people in the band and kind of producing together. I was more in changing the sound in a more electronic way. So I started, experimenting with analog synths and production in the box and all that stuff. And the similarities to where I am now, it's like I'm also trying to do something really different this time. So we're recording a bunch of tracks now, and we have already completed the live take of all the album, and we're currently in the mixing procedure, but it's completely different than the sound that I had before. And it's something that I usually do. In a way, I'm trying not to, to cage. I don't know if there's an expression like that, to cage myself in a way. So I want to be free to do whatever comes in mind, depending on the mood that I am, the place that I am, the people that I associate with, the relationships, all of that influence.
What causes these changes to try different things? Is there a way to describe it?
I guess I haven't found it yet, I'm trying to, each time is a different time, and I'm listening to different things. I'm experiencing different things, so that translates into the things that I want to record and to write. I guess I'm still searching. I don't know what I'm searching for, but I don't know. I guess I will see where it leads.
Any recent success with that?
For the last 6 months, I've been working with 2 friends. We're having a band, a trio band, and we decided to go in a remote place. There is a lake here in Greece, next to the Bulgarian borders. It's a really beautiful place. And one of the guys has a house there, and we decided to move all the studio and stay there for 8 days with some ideas, some already written tracks and some jams. And we recorded about 35 songs there. We came up with 15, I think, and now it's going to be 10. But working with my friends on this one, and it's a new collaboration, a new band. And I've always wanted to have such a small band, like 3 persons only. Change the sound as well. And I just went with the flow. Let everybody do what he feels naturally doing in those ideas. Not directing, like I'm imagining this sound here, this production here. Everybody was trying to find his place in this material. So the sound is something different as well. It's more raw. It's definitely a live album. And I think mostly people, bring the changes. So I don't know if it answers your question. I don't know.
No, absolutely. I'm also very curious to hear, because this has been something you've been mentioning a few times now, the change between working by yourself on music versus having many other people involved. And I was wondering what might be the advantages and disadvantages of making music by yourself versus having other people there for you.
It used to be a disadvantage for me to work with other people. I always thought that it's best to produce something by myself and take the blame by myself if something is not good or it doesn't, go anywhere. But I think that I'm not going to be doing that anymore. I don't know. I think it's best to be with people. It's not only the music that comes out of it, it's the friendship, the relations, the things that we discuss about, the time that we spend together. It all, in a way, describes the music that we're doing at this time. It's the timing for these 3 people is like very good at this time. Not only in terms of everybody's is not something different job-wise or the timing mentally, you know what I'm talking about.
I think it's interesting that you mentioned taking the blame. In your creative process, is that something that you worry about a lot? That the final product might not come out in a way that maybe your audience might like it? Because taking a blame sounds very harsh on yourself almost, that you're very critical of yourself, right? That's what it sounds like, at least. Is that the case?
Yes, it is a lot. Unfortunately, I'm trying to not be like that, but it's not an easy thing. I'm working on it. And working with people definitely makes this easier.
Do you have an understanding where that comes from, that fear?
Insecurity, I think that's the main reason about this. It's not only that I want for, the final product to reach out to people and mean something to people, but by the time I finish doing something, my mind is already in something new. And this always is a very difficult situation to promote the thing that you've already finished. So basically it's an insecurity, about the sound that I'm having at this time. And mostly about what the songs are talking about.
And what do you do if you're insecure about a song? Do you often decide not to release it, or do you like taking risks?
Yes, most of the times I don't release it.
Really? So how many unreleased songs are in your vault?
A lot. There are many songs, many ideas, many songs, many small ideas, complete songs, complete albums that I have never I find them that out of date. I don't know, something that I wouldn't release at this time. I don't know, maybe later. If I come back to them, I will find some ideas, and sometimes I do that as well. I go back and see some things, mainly lyrics that I have written when I was younger, sometimes are better than the things that I'm trying to describe now, more childish-wise, which I like, with a few changes can be something really visceral. I forgot the question.
Just about the tracks that you might leave unreleased. That's what it was about.
Yeah, okay. There are many tracks.
But that brings me to my next question, which, what we've been talking about so far involves a lot of your creative process. And I'm wondering, how do you map out your sound? How do you approach an idea for a song or even a whole album? Can you take me through that creative process?
Differs from time to time, but mainly I try to write lyrics first. I try to keep notes about the things that I have in my mind from conversations that I have with my friends, from trips, travels that I take. For instance, I was in Istanbul now for 3 months, and I stayed there. I just came back 1 month ago, and this really comes in handy, just writing some notes and some stuff while I'm on the road or I'm somewhere else or I'm thinking something, and this usually comes at the end in a way that produces a song. If I have the lyrics first, it's easier for me to imagine the environment, the music environment on the lyrics. But doesn't mean that sometimes ideas come playing the guitar or playing a synth or playing the bass. But I find it more interesting when I'm when I'm having a story already written down on paper. I think this is my main thing.
The storytelling thing, or the question about where the inspiration comes from, is not always the best question. But since you mentioned having a story, I still wonder where can you describe where you get your stories from? I mean, it's obviously life and the experiences that you make, but is there a particular red thread that goes through the music that you make in general that is inspired by something in particular?
I don't know. Sometimes it's are big issues that happen in my life or minor details that I get my attention. It's movies. I love movies. It's like a thing. I think that in a week I will definitely watch a movie during the day, every day. Try to see something. I pick a director and I try to see all his filmography, and I like this a lot. I get very inspired by movies. But as I told you, it's like sometimes big issues bother me, and I want to express myself, and or just I don't know, something that I might see on the street, a talk that I might have, a nice screenplay on a movie. Some things that I might catch up from there. It's not one thing. It's definitely not one thing. And sometimes there are some things that bother me a lot. So a whole album might be around those subjects.
Can you share a recent issue that you can relate to, maybe your current sound or your current mood?
A recent issue. I don't know. A recent issue. It's there are many tracks in the latest thing that we're doing now that are I want to say love oriented. It is love oriented. No, it's exactly that, and relationship that never came through, time in between people that never came through, chances that might never come through, and I think most of the tracks in the latest work is revolving around that issue. But my trip to Istanbul also produced some other stuff, experiencing the life there. Also produced some ideas in my head. And apart from the lyrics and the stories, I also recorded some musicians from there. And we try to use this stuff as well in the things that we're doing now. I don't know, it's not exactly an ethnic thing. It's not going there, but some elements might relate to that.
I also totally understand that it's not always easy to talk about inspirations when you're creative and when you make music, but I find what you said, extremely, extremely interesting. Also, reverting back to the movies, the question that popped up in my head when you mentioned that was, what kind of movie would describe your current sound? Because I'm assuming, I mean, you just put out a release last June, I think. So you're planning the next one already? Is that already in the plans? And
what release do you mean? You mean the track from the movie?
in your last LP that came out in June 2022.
Stone Town, yes, Stone Town. Stone Town was this album was mainly produced after I had a trip for a month in Africa, and I had some field recording as well there. So I used many samples from that trip that produces some loops, and the last album was basically a project. It's not exactly what I had in mind, but this friend of mine, Rako, who is a rapper, came, and approached me. He liked this kind of samples and this kind of loops, and I said, okay, let's go with it. Let's try something different. And I tried to put these two elements together, like real playing, real drumming, real recording, and field recording and stuff, but using rap and hip hop elements as well in this way. I don't think it's something I'm going to do again soon. It came out through this vibe from that trip.
And Rako was someone that you had met before. He's from Greece as well, right?
Yes, he's from Greece as well. Yes.
Very, very good MC, I have to say. Very, very nice rapper. Really
he's a good one. He's very young. He's really young, and he plays at. I had a video. How I met him because he's one of the characters in a video clip that I had for a track in a small place. He's one of the dancers, and he on that clip, and he approached me at the end of the shooting. He told me that I also write music and I produce stuff and I also rap. And I asked him to show me some of his material. And he came. You don't mind if I say some stories? It's okay. And he came. He came to the studio, and he gave me some tracks, but there were no lyrics on it, no rap parts. And I said, okay, how? He said, I will sing it to you right now. And he did the rap parts, and I got amazed. I said, wow. Okay,
so he played the instrumental and then he rapped live for you. Or freestyle for you, basically.
Yes, he freestyle for me. He has so many things written already. He's like.
No, I actually really enjoyed the album, very much so. So I find it interesting that you say that you wouldn't want to do something like that again.
I will explain that. It's not that I put this behind. It's like always when I finish an album, I'm always imagining during the procedure and after that how this thing is going to be live, because it's something that I really love doing, playing live. And we made some attempts to play live, but I find it really difficult because it has to involve a lot of people, and that's not an easy thing nowadays, to have a lot of people, and working with a lot of people and playing live with a lot of people. It's not affordable.
Can you elaborate on that?
Yes, the band. I had to expand the members in the band, so we managed to do it with 6 people, which is not something that you can easily work and move around, tour, for example, or play to venues, because the budget goes higher and it's not so easy. Touring is like, it's getting more difficult. So I had to drop this idea and move to the next one.
So when you make music, you obviously always have the idea of performing it live.
Yeah.
So it needs to make sense.
It's a need. It's a need. It's a pattern that I have in my head, which makes it healthier. Makes it healthy for me. I have to, when I'm in the studio and working or in a place and recording and having an album and then mixing and producing, do all this stuff, I need to go out and play. And this gives me, enough space and time performing and playing, gathering new ideas in order to get back in the studio and work on something new. If I don't have this pattern and going back to the studio, again, it's like it's a half thing for me.
I think for me, when I first discovered your music, something that really came up for me was when I was reading up about, who you are and where you're from, and reading that you were from Greece. From what I've witnessed, it's not every day that you stumble across artists from Greece. especially with your sound that you have a very particular sound. Singing in English, the language is always a topic. When you decide, you could have very well also sang in Greece, made that decision in Greek. Sorry. First off, regarding the language, I'm wondering, what is it to internationalize the music a little bit, to sing not in your mother tongue?
Uh, it, it it began like that, for sure. And I was always listening to English spoken sort of music, but I find it really difficult to write in Greek. I have never mastered that skill. I don't know. It's not an easy thing, and there are not many artists that I really love in Greece that do that in a way that affects me. So I didn't want to experiment on that. It's easier for me to express myself in English. It's more compact. I can say something with fewer words and have a bigger meaning. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Absolutely. Totally.
Yeah.
Totally makes sense. Getting started as a musician in Greece, I'm wondering where does your early memory start? I think I've read that your mom was the person that gave you your first guitar.
Yeah.
I'm wondering what the process was like then. Like, you started playing guitar, getting interested in music. When was the moment for you when you realized that's something that you wanted to stick with and to live off of?
I started recording tapes from the radio. That was the first thing that I started doing. I had a little keyboard, and tried to play over that. And then the guitar came, a Russian guitar. and that, I just focused on that. I started playing, I was like I became the awful student, spending his hours, just playing guitar, But I always had that freedom, not pushing from my family to, okay, don't focus on music, focus on something else. I always had that freedom to do whatever you want, unless you're happy. And which is a tricky thing, I could easily be lost. But that freedom, and not lack of guidance, but freedom, gave me the opportunity, to be more involved in music. But the first thing I remember was just writing tracks that I liked from tapes and going to the local store and make, tapes of songs that I really love.
Would you say that it's something that is somehow planned in a musician's life? That what I want to say is, how much planning is involved versus just letting things coming your way, basically? Do you know what I mean? Like, when you started, I guess it started as a passion, but then at some point there's a moment that comes where you make a decision whether or not this will be having an impact on the rest of your life. And I'm wondering how that was for you, that moment when you realized you want to live as a musician, you want to go on tour, you want to make money off music, you want to sell records. Do you remember that moment that decision was made?
Yeah, of course I remember that moment. And it's like those moments, when you grow older, you wish that you should take risks more often. And, it's always about money. Okay, you have to live somehow. And I used to work as a graphic designer for many years at the company. And but I was working with music on the side, forming bands, playing live, making records with other previous bands that I had. And at some point, I got fed up going 9 to 5, and I wanted to focus on music. The truth is that the years were different back then. I'm talking about when I stopped my regular work was 2002. There was no crisis on the horizon. It was like a different thing. I wasn't worried about if I'm not going to make it in music. I just knew that I had to stop my work and focus on that. And I started working as a musician, and I still do that. I produce music for the media. I write for television series, for commercials, for movies, theater. This is where my main income comes. It's not from my records and my touring and this is how I support my individuality, doing whatever I want with my stuff. Maybe this is the reason they don't have this consistency. One record from another. I don't care.
Is that fear still present for you? That fear, 2002 versus 2023. I mean,
Yeah, a
obviously
lot.
things have changed, so it's
Yeah, a
clear
lot.
that we live in a different time now. But you feel it, the pressure more present on you as a musician nowadays? I
Yes,
mean,
it
you
is.
did mention you make, you have other incomes through other things,
Yes.
but I think that even with other income coming in, you still want to follow your passion and you still do want to make records and stuff. How does that affect you in your creative process?
It affects me a lot. It's not an easy thing, to try to stay focused with all these things that is happening, but that are happening. But I know that I don't want to go back, to my previous state. So I always somehow magically happen to, to survive through this journey. But that hasn't changed, in my heart. I want to do that and only that. So I have to find a way, to do it. And even if I have to get a job again, I will do it in order to keep doing that. It's my psychotherapy in a way. I don't know.
Yeah, that's very well put, actually. I mean, making music, listening to music, I also consider very much psychotherapy. You mentioned a couple of things that make me think in general about, living as a creative and living as a musician. You mentioned the money thing. Of course, we all need money to live somehow. And I hear a lot of passion what you do, of course. And I remember this thing that I read in an older interview of yours. I think it was 4 or 5 years ago. They were talking about the label you were on, Claremont 56, I think it was.
Yeah.
And
that was in a small place, that LP.
Yeah. And I think the interviewer was asking you if you saw that as an opportunity to get your music to a more international crowd. And your response was very modest. Your response was like, "Well, I'm still not there yet. I'm not even sure if I can consider what I do, international, or even say that I have an international career yet." Something along those lines. And that made me think if that's something you consider nowadays. Is it about getting by as a musician, or is there an aspiration for you also to say, one day I want to be very famous, I want to have a lot of money? Like, how much does this dream play a role in your daily creativity?
It never stops, man.
Yeah.
It never stops. It's like it's a childish thing. Sometimes I think that it's a childish dream, but I wouldn't lie that I wouldn't want to play in a stadium, with many people. I think that would be amazing, but yeah, I still have this urge, that keeps me going, and mostly, all the guys that we work together, have this in the back on their head. It's not an easy thing to do nowadays, but it's a good thing to have in your mind. You can never stop dreaming about it.
No, I absolutely agree.
Not only music, but in everything that you
Exactly.
you get your hands on. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say that. I mean, musicians
At
have
least
it for
it's
music.
dreaming is still free. So
Yeah,
it's okay.
that's so true. No, and I mean it's everywhere, right? I mean, if you work for a big company, you have a lower position there, you obviously dream to be
Exactly.
a CEO one day, and
Exactly.
there's it's everywhere. So no, I was just wondering how much this affects artists in their daily doing. Like, if some people shut it off and don't read the articles about the next artist that blew up worldwide and the next Justin Bieber and the next Beyonce and then I'm not a musician, so I can't say that it puts pressure on me to become that, but I wonder how much pressure it is for musicians to be like, I want to be there. And there must be days where you think about that, and
it depends. It depends on the person, But it's not an easy thing to avoid nowadays. There is this constant comparison between people through all this social media outburst. It's not an easy thing to avoid. But I think I don't know. I'm kind of optimistic about the future. I think that good things and big things will happen. for many artists in the future that will not be part of all this. Won't have an Instagram, won't have a TikTok, and I don't know. I think that this will change eventually. I hope so. Because I really don't like the current situation. It's not an easy thing, even the pressure that puts in you. But I don't know, this constant, Big Brother thing everywhere. Everybody's watching what others doing, who is hype at the moment, and even if you feel like you're so strong that does not affect you, subconsciously, things get in your head, and translate in the things that you do, in the way that you live, in the way that you feel. So definitely the way that you write music or you produce stuff. I tried, I'm not very good at this social thing, which is a music business thing now. It's not only a social thing. You have to be involved in all that. But I do it for my sanity. I cannot... this is as far as I can go with that. I find myself, outdated sometimes, but when I talk to younger people, how you cannot do that, why you don't do this, why you don't do this. I said, okay. I'm open and I listen to things, but I do as much as I can, as I feel okay doing. I try, sometimes I want to do a post in Instagram. My whole body and thinking, it's like I'm standing there like half an hour on what to write. Which is not the case, young people just out there, like the shittiest thing that might think it's out there. Okay, don't give a shit, don't give a fuck, don't worry. I cannot do that, I feel like I'm constantly being judged by someone, I don't know, basically by me. So this is not a healthy situation, so I'm not doing it so often.
Yeah, but on the other hand, it's a good thing, right? It means that you're very reflective on what you want to put out there. And I think that, it's all, to me, it's always, quality over quantity, right? I mean, we don't need to post things every day. On the other hand, some artists need to, right? I mean, you need to keep feeding the people with information and keep feeding the people with your whereabouts and what you're working on. So I totally understand. It's a difficult balance to find.
If you do it easy, it comes easy for you. I can totally understand it, if it's not a burden on you, doing that, I think it's okay. But I think it definitely affects everybody. Everyone is affected by that. Everyone is affected by that, I guess. I don't know.
Being in the music industry for so long, is there something you wish you would have known about this space that you're in, that you wish you would have known when you started?
If I wish I would have known, it's about knowledge in a way, but I wish I could take risks more often as as years go by. I wish I could travel more. I wish I could be with people more. It only gives me more things to do if I do that. I know that if I travel, if I go on a trip and then come back, ideas will float in my head and I will do stuff, but I wish I would be more, more risky. And it's something that I'm working on, it's not an easy thing. I wish I could take risks more often, don't think about it so much.
Is there a risk you've recently taken that you were happy with?
Yes. The thing that my recent move to Istanbul, it's something that I'm working on. And I'm going to go back. I'm trying to apply for a visa and stay there for a couple of months and come back again here and work there as well as a musician or a producer. I went there because I have a friend. There's this girl that is managing me now, and she's from Turkey. And she introduced me to some bands, and I went there and worked on the production of their albums. And it's something that I really want to do. Be there for some months, then come back to Greece as well and work here. I wish I could be like that in the earlier years as well. I think that every young people, I'm not considering myself young, but every young people should travel more, and just experience things with their own eyes and not through the things that they see, as we talked about in the social media, and about trying to understand about the situation in a country or the people of a country without even going there. It's a totally different thing. And I think that It's only logical that you have to do that.
You just mentioned Turkey as a destination that you want to move to, also because you're working with producers. For me, obviously, this podcast is about, showing, let's say, the diamonds in the rough, the undiscovered artists that deserve more attention for their musical talents. And I'm wondering, who is on your playlist now? Who are 2-3 artists that you would recommend to the listeners to definitely check out? Is there something that you can say off the top of your head?
On top of my head, it's not something new, something recent. I love John Martin. Do you know John Martin?
Haven't heard. No.
Okay, I love John Martin a lot. He's not alive, but I love his music. That's why I said it's not the recent stuff. And I can no, it's not an easy. If I go to my Spotify now, I can cheat, and see my latest love and like things. Yes, I can do that.
That's
because that might be.
That's what it's all about,
Because I listened a lot of music when I was in Istanbul. Because it was the first time that I had my headphones, and walking a lot for many hours and listening to music. But there's always so old stuff, I listened again to Francis Lai. He's a soundtrack director. I listened to Badalamenti a lot. I really like soundtracks. I listened to... I'm cheating now, eh?
It's all good. Any emerging artists that you feel like are just maybe have recently started in the music industry, or?
I saw recently. I have heard his music because he's moved in Athens now. I think he's from Ireland, or I'm not sure, or from England. Westerman. Do you know Westerman? Westerman, yes. I really like his kind of, and his approach in the production, because I think he's doing everything by his own, but his songwriting and his voice. And I saw him live. Do you know Stella from Greece? Have you heard Stella?
Is she a more famous pop artist over there? Is that possible? Yeah.
Yes. She recently had an album released, and she signed with Sub Pop. Mm-hmm. And so Stella, she's a really friend of mine. We're kind of very old friends. And she played a gig now in Athens, and Westerman was the opening act, and I really liked him. I really liked his energy, his style, his lyrics, his vibe. He was really good.
Yeah, that brings me also to the question of influences, right? So
the question of influences.
So I stumbled upon Chris Rea and Pete Doherty, even, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Stevie Wonder, like people that have accompanied your musical influences in some way. Is there a way for you to describe how you take in what these artists bring to the table and how you apply it to your own musical style?
It's basically this era, this, past retro year atmosphere, and the production value that all these artists have, throughout the recordings. I love the basic songwriting that some artists have, but they make it sound so complex. Sometimes I'm fascinated by their lives. It's everything can influence me about an artist, not only his product, but the way that he decides to experience life. Mostly this kind of stuff, influenced me. Do you know Todd Rundgren? Do you remember this one? Okay,
that's perfect. I have a lot of music to check out later.
Okay. It's like this era, soft rock, early 70s, and that stuff, and 80s. That's he's a really good one.
Hey, if someone is tuning into this episode and is just getting started making music, maybe, somewhere in their bedroom, first steps, first creations, and trying to follow that dream of becoming an artist, what are some of the advices that you would give to that person?
Advices. Wow. Probably listen to a lot of music. Find your way into music. Focus on artists. Try to dig in and understand what they did, and don't listen to music like goes out in your head and you never pay attention to that. Read a lot. Understand the lyrics. The meaning of the songs. I don't know. It's stay focused. It's not an easy thing. Don't compromise easily. I don't know. Shitty advice. It's not something. It's a very generic advice.
I don't
know
think
what
so.
I don't know what to. Because it's the media has changed so much. Someone might tell you, be more active socially, be more, upfront, make videos, work on your image, I don't know, this kind of stuff. But I don't know. I'm not good at that, So it's not an advice that I would give. Focus on that, Just focus on your craft. Do your craft the best that you can. Study your craft, and eventually it would lead somewhere. At least you will know that you tried your hard, in leading all this to a place, to a product. And also don't think about it too much. Record, take stuff out there, just in order only to say that this was not good. Okay, let's go to the next one. Because if you keep stuff inside all the time, it has to do with you, inside you can never move to the next one. You have to make mistakes, you have to understand about that. You learn from that. Another generic, learn from your mistakes.
I think it's interesting because you just basically talk to yourself. Yeah. I think that's,
Yeah, you got me.
And I want to say with that, I really, truly enjoy everything you've created.
Thank you, man.
I think it's
so much.
incredible how you, with your music, you bring people together, you touch people from around the world, really. And I live in Berlin.
That's a really nice thing.
Yeah,
nice
seriously.
Thing to say. Thank you.
So don't be too critical of yourself, and do release some of these unreleased songs. I'm curious. Maybe to finish this conversation with the last question I want to ask you is, what do you do it all for? What do you want to leave behind?
What do I want to do? What do I want to leave behind? So far, definitely, it's not children. Okay. What do I want to leave behind? I don't know. You mean what I want to be remembered in a way?
It's a very deep question. But what is your aspiration? Like, can you describe where this drive comes from to keep creating?
I cannot breathe otherwise. I cannot be, I will lose my sanity if I don't do that. It's my way of expressing myself. And I was never. I work on that a lot lately. I was never the talkative guy, expressing myself in a relationship, which is like the worst thing that you should do. You should be talkative. You should express yourself. Resolve your issues. But music was my way of, saying some things in a different level. To some people, to me, the situation that everybody's experiencing. So it's my, my speech. I have to talk, otherwise I would be speechless.
Babis, thank you very much for your time and for this
thank you so much,
really
Miles.
nice talk. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
This was Unsigned Hype episode 2 with Babis, aka Sillyboy'S Ghost Relatives. The track you're hearing right now is called In a Small Place. You will find the song in the Unsigned Hype podcast playlist along with all other songs discussed in this episode. Make sure to support Babis by checking out his music and following him on social media. And for your weekly Unsigned Hype, make sure to also follow us on Spotify and Instagram. All the links are in the show notes below.
And now that it's almost a year, it feels like a new dawn. My choices between love and fear is all that I've done wrong. I know it's time to move on. I've gotta get out of this place.